Welcome to Plastic Model Mojo, a podcast dedicated to scale modeling, as well as the news and events around the hobby. Let's join Mike and Kentucky Dave as they strive to be informative, entertaining, and help you keep your modeling mojo alive.
Oh yeah, Dave, we're at episode 88, my friend.
I know. Big 100's closing in.
Good grief, 12 to go, and we'll be there.
Absolutely.
Hard to believe.
Yep. And man, we have hit the stride of the quote unquote modeling season, man.
We're in it. One of us more than the other, but we're in it. Hopefully May will rectify that, but we'll talk about that a little more later.
That's right.
What is up in your model sphere, Dave?
Drugs. Drugs are up in my model sphere.
Let's hear how this is going.
Let me clarify that, lest any of the listeners think something weirder than normal's going along. As everybody knows, I've got an essential tremor. As everybody knows, it's gotten worse in the last couple of the years. One of the reasons I have modeling fluid at the bench is that the alcohol actually kills off the tremor and allows me to continue to model. However, that's not a permanent cross
Not when it takes 2+ beers to get you there.
Exactly.
Because then you cross another line that keeps you from modeling.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, tell us what's up about that.
Well, so I hadn't seen my doctor since prior to the pandemic, so way past time to go in and get the full check. Got the full check. And and everything's good. Healthy. I'm healthier than I have any right to be given the lifestyle I lead.
Whew, using the whole fist there, Doc.
Yeah, really. I like Fletch too.
Sorry, man. Go ahead.
That's all right. So one of the things I discussed with the doctor is the next step in dealing with these tremors is their low-dose anti-seizure medication. And so I'd experimented with an anti-seizure medication about 35 years ago when my tremors were much less worse. But I decided now's the time, and I've at least got to experiment with it. So the doctor prescribed me, I think it's called Primidone. And as he describes it to me, that when it hits your bloodstream, it's actually phenobarbital, which some of you all may recognize as the chemical name for truth serum.
One of them, yeah.
One of them. And I take it at night. I've only taken it twice now. The first day, it did have a side effect of feeling like I was a little foggy until early afternoon. Second day, much less in the way of side effects. It is so far pretty darn effective. It doesn't completely eliminate the tremors, but takes them down to the point where I will have no trouble doing the detail work I need. So the drug experiments go forward in my modeling sphere.
Well, I told you earlier in the week, possibly, your best modeling's ahead of you.
Maybe. We'll see. I
hope so.
You and me both. Well,
yeah, you and me both too. Yeah.
No matter what, my best modeling's ahead of me because I'm having a hell of a fun time.
That's true.
These last 4 years have been just fantastic, and I like modeling. I want my models to look better. I want to get better, et cetera, but the real joy is the modeling and all the people. But yes, the effects I'm seeing so far give me some hope that I'll be able to maintain modeling, effective modeling that I enjoy out farther into the future.
Well, one thing I will say that, well, two things. One, it's noble of you to discuss this in this kind of public forum. That's kind of cool.
I don't hold back.
I know you don't, but on the vein of not holding back, myself and the other club members, along with you, we've grown along with your condition as the years have gone by. And, we make jokes, and it may sound cruel to some people, but, we're all in this together, and we hope the best for you, man.
Yeah. Now, I want to see, with your model sphere, I want to see you top drugs.
I cannot top drugs.
Damn.
Well, in the corporate buzz lingo, you got your work-life balance.
Yes.
Well, of late, I've been struggling with the model hobby life balance.
Uh-oh. Is this due to spring breaking out?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I got a wife that likes to put off the first cut of the lawn until all the wee little bugs have come back to life and started flying around. So I've cut the grass one time, and one time only. But that's not it. It's more a son struggling with a particular class in school, and the wife and I both being kind of math oriented. So now I've given it away. It's a math class.
Sure.
Spend a lot of time helping him along, and then like tonight, the expansion tank on my Volvo's coolant system gave up the ghost.
How old was that tank?
It was an OEM tank. I can only assume by the condition it was in, the darkening of the plastic, that it was an original installation. My car's a 99.
You know what? You got to give the Volvo guys credit if you can get 24 years out of your. I assume this was the radiator expansion tank.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So, and I'd been meaning to change it for a while because it's been leaking a little bit. So I bought an OEM replacement part. It's been sitting in my spares cabinet for a while in the garage. And finally, last 2 days, it's been like putting some big spots on the pavement. I'm like, I better change it. So I changed it. It was an easy job. Took me maybe an hour to do it all and refill it. But it's just stuff like that, Dave.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Yeah. The expansion tank in that car is older than most of my coworkers.
That's a good way to look at it.
I guess so. So it's that's done. But back to the model sphere. Despite all the stuff going on, I've been pretty good about coming down to the shop at post 9 p.m. and knocking out an hour, almost 2 sometimes. We've been there. You've been there with me. We've been talking and chatting via either video or on the phone. And I've gotten a lot done, but we'll talk about that later. So hobby life balance, it's important.
That would be a good subject. Maybe some listeners have some thoughts on when their hobby life balance swings back and forth. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and what happened when it swung too far in the wrong direction? I'd like to know about that. That's some good information for people who are maybe swinging in the wrong direction.
Absolutely. Mike, I'm assuming you have a modeling fluid in hand.
I do, and I hear yours. Maybe folks can hear mine rattle a little bit too. I'm in a little different glass tonight, so maybe not so loud. I think it's official, Dave.
Yep.
Russell's Reserve 10-year is pretty much displaced Bullet. Bullet Orange Label is my staple.
Your timing is excellent, and I'll tell you why later.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. I know what you're referring to, but sorry, folks, nothing new, no big adventure, nothing for you to wonder if you need to run out and go try. Unless you haven't tried Russell's Reserve 10-year, I would recommend that you do so. And Dave, what are you drinking?
Well, I'm drinking not a bourbon, a whiskey. Now, the difference is a bourbon has to be 51% corn mash and has to be aged in charred white oak barrels.
Charred white
oak barrels. Now, whiskey does not have that requirement. The mash can be any number of grains, and it does not have to be aged in charred white oak. It can be aged any number of ways. Ian Fraser from Hamilton, when we went up to Heritage Con, was kind enough to bring us a bottle of 40 Creek Canadian whiskey. It's 80 proof, 40% alcohol by volume. And I can tell you from sipping it, it's light. It's lighter than most bourbons as far as the body, but it has a really great taste. And when we get to the end of the segment, I'm sure I'm going to be pretty darn happy with this.
One way or the other.
One way or the other. Probably both ways.
That's right. Well, Dave, the mailbag is always got something in it.
Yes, it does.
And I think it's time we just slide right on into listener mail.
You got it.
Well, first up, Dave, is one of our longtime friends, John Vickus, out in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Yes, one of the Septemberists.
One of the Septemberists. And John really liked episode 86 with Ed Baroth.
And you know what? That does not surprise me at all. John's background, by the way, for those who don't know, John is a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist or psychologist? Psychiatrist, I believe.
Well, he'll correct us.
Yeah, he'll correct us, whichever one it was. So that does not surprise me that he enjoys a discussion of the mental and organizational side of modeling.
Well, on that theme, he says he listened to Ed in episode 86 with fascination. Ed's experiences trying to blend his engineering self with his artistic self were illuminating to John, and his emphasis, or even perhaps his plea for models to strive for balance, he got a lot out of that.
Well, good.
Now John's email is, did I forward you this?
I don't think so.
Well, I will. It's lengthy.
John's emails are always lengthy, and that's meant as a compliment.
So I'm going to get to the meat of this, and I got to give John credit. This thing's kind of compartmentalized, so I can do that. So good job, John. You're a good writer. And on the topic of balance, John says the tragic aspect of imbalance is when fear of inaccuracy or the dread of getting it wrong, in all caps, paralyzes the modeling process.
Oh, yeah. And I think every modeler can relate to that.
I do too. It happens to me. And sometimes you got to get to the point where you just cut and run. I think that's kind of where Ed was in spirit anyway.
Yep.
So he thanks us and Ed for the sage advice, and he will seek more balance between his artistic impression and his historical accuracy in his modeling. And he concludes by thinking or stating that he doesn't think he could cut off a wing or a tail, though.
Well, you know what? I think that's a special diorama case. Although you never know, John, you may get there at some point.
Up next, Michael Radsky from the folks up in Indianapolis.
I just got to see him.
I know. Agent 001 checking in. He wrote in pre-show.
Yep.
How many dozen patties are we looking at this year? So, if folks don't remember or have tuned in of late and haven't gone through the back catalog yet, Dave and I have been attending this show in Indy. Well, this would be the fourth year for you. I had to miss, unfortunately, but.
Well, this is post-COVID, because I've been to Indy for 25 years. Yeah.
Yes, you have. And I've been several times with the club before this.
But this is since that they moved to the new location and everything.
Well, inception of Plastic Model Mojo. We went in 2020, and then we didn't go for a year and a half. And then we went, and that's where we are now, right?
Yep.
So Indianapolis has a Caribbean restaurant, a Jamaican restaurant called Patties of Jamaica. And it's a very successful little restaurant. So successful that they're not open on the weekends. Imagine that.
Yeah.
A restaurant successful enough that they're not open on Saturday or Sunday. And they sell these Jamaican meat patties by the dozen, frozen, and Dave and I were trying to get them, and we couldn't because the Indy show's on a Saturday. So Patties of Jamaica's closed on Saturday. Mr. Radsky stepped up and duly earned his title as Special Agent 001 by taking it upon himself to facilitate our acquisition of dozens of Jamaican meat patties from Patties of Jamaica on a day they are open and delivering them at the Indianapolis show.
Yep.
So,
along with a bag of ice to keep them cold.
Exactly. And we talk about community a lot, and this is one of those little side notes to the community that make this all worthwhile. So, Mike, thank you for the Jamaican meat patties. I got to drive to Louisville to get them, but that's better than getting to Indy on Saturday and not being able to buy them at all.
Yeah. If there are any left by the time Mike makes it to my house.
Well, and I will know who ate them if there's not. And
actually, Michael, I will tell you that my daughter, that night when I got home from Indy, I put one in the air fryer because my youngest daughter loves those Jamaican meat patties from Patties of Jamaica, and she was so thrilled. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. You were, as always, you go above and beyond doing that for us, and I can't tell you how much I enjoyed talking with you, and I know you were busy at the show because you were working it, and I really appreciate it.
Well, up next is Preston Culp from near Wichita, Kansas. And in regards to episode 87, which was the last episode, which was the Wheel of Accidental Wisdom with Evan McCallum.
Yeah.
And he drops his answers to a couple of these questions, which kind of is an interesting segue to something we've been discussing offline.
Yeah.
That in future installments of the Wheel of Accidental Wisdom, we're going to post the topics that the Wheel put out in the dojo, in the Facebook group, and let you folks comment on what your answer might be to some of those things.
Absolutely. We want to hear that because, I mean, Mike, Evan and I, or Mike, Jim and I, depending on who's the guest when we do the wheel, we'll give you our quick take on what the question is. But some of those things really will develop into a really full discussion. So, we would love to have that kind of input.
Preston, thank you for writing in about that. And again, we're gonna start posting that so folks can have these discussions in the dojo.
Mike, that makes a point, if you don't mind me interrupting you, that makes a point. The dojo exists for those kind of, in addition to posting your work and, everybody getting to see what everybody else is working on, which is fun and great. But the dojo is a resource, a community resource, where you can crowdsource questions. Hey, I've never used GX100. What's the thinning ratio that works for you? Any question like that. I want the dojo to grow to be able, it's a community and it's a modeling community. I want it to grow to be able to be that resource that when you've got a question and you want to crowdsource some knowledge, that's where you go to post it. So please do stuff like that.
Well, he closes by saying he's glad his wife is clueless on how much money he ends up spending after listening to podcasts.
Shh. That's why my wife still thinks the name of our podcast is On the Bench.
Especially when you all have Dr. Strangebrust as a guest. I think you've bought almost everything he mentions during the interview.
Yep. So have I.
Including an H&S Evolution, which is working out well for him. So
great.
Preston, look for future posts in the dojo regarding which topics we attempt on the Wheel of Accidental Wisdom, and I'm glad you like it. A lot of people like it. It's a good segment. Speaking
of which, guys, if you're listening and you got an idea, a question for the wheel, please send it in. We burned through a bunch of them with Evan, so we're trying to build the wheel back up. So if you've got something that's a question, particularly one that's appropriate for, just a quick hot take, please send it in.
Willie Garcia.
All right.
I think he's in Ireland, right? He's the
which is ironic for a guy with the last name Garcia.
Well, it's actually Willie Mayhoff Garcia, so he's got a little German going on there too.
There you go.
And he explained that. So
yeah,
he is appreciative of the input we gave him, but to just buy the damn mask for the Ukrainian digital camo.
Amen. Amen.
He ended up getting those from D&N Models, but he had to buy them from B&A Model World out of Australia. So that's going to work out fine. They're good. They're a good seller.
Yes, B&A is great. Think of 15 years ago, that transaction would never happen.
No, it wouldn't.
A guy in Ireland reaching out to an Australian supplier for a set of masks manufactured in, Poland or Ukraine, wherever they happen to be manufactured. Boy, this is the golden age of modeling.
Well, it's the democratization of the world with the internet, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Gotta love it.
Yep.
Well, while doing some research, you come across a can of worms called the scale effect of color.
Oh, my Lord.
And he's thinking this would be a good topic. I'm thinking we can cover this in listener mail, at least to some extent. And I'm going to start.
Okay.
Because I did a little digging around. So he wants to know what are our thoughts on this. And so scale color.
Do you want to say what scale color is in theory? Just the overall 40,000 foot view?
So scale color in theory is, well, it's not a theory, it's fact. Or is a theory fact.
Right.
Based on the premise that the further you are from an object, basically the lighter the color will appear to the original color when viewed at close distance. And this can be borne out by, the classic example is you paint a 10 foot by 10 foot square of a color on some neutral background. And then you paint with the exact same paint from the exact same pot or can or whatever on a 1 inch by 1 inch square. Right?
Yep.
And you hold that 1 inch by 1 inch square out in front of you while you're standing right in front of this 10 foot by 10 foot square of color you painted on this neutral background wall. And you start backing up.
Yep.
And you back up to the point that to your eyes, the 1 by 1 square of color in your hand appears to be the same size as the 10 foot by 10 foot square that's painted on that wall that you're now God knows how far away from.
Right.
Now they do not look like the same color. And they do not look like the same color for a couple of reasons. One is atmospheric conditions. You're looking through humidity and dust and whatever. And the other condition is you've got this hemisphere in front of you that all this ambient light is coming into your eyes from. All your direct and peripheral vision, right?
Right.
Which is messing with that thing you're looking at 8,000 yards away from you now, or whatever it is.
Right.
So all that is impacting the color in your hand versus that 10 by 10 square you painted on the wall way out in front of you. So the scale color theory says that if you're building something in a smaller scale, you should paint it a lighter color to account for that viewing distance difference.
Right.
But that makes an assumption that I don't agree with.
Which is?
You're not viewing that model at, you're viewing a 72nd scale model at 1 foot should be like the same as viewing a full-size object at 72 feet.
Right.
Sort of, maybe. That doesn't work out, but that's
we know what
that's the spirit of things, right?
Right. We'll fill in the math later.
Okay, but you're not comparing that 72nd scale airplane to a real item viewed at 72 feet. You're comparing that real object to the model at 1 foot for both of them. That's why you're putting in all the cockpit detail. That's why you're detailing the landing gear, putting all the plumbing in the gear wells, putting new machine gun barrels on it. All this stuff you can't see at 72 feet, right? So I'm not sure I'm in agreement with this whole scale color thing on that premise. Now, I will say there is something to be done on a scale model versus the real thing to make it a little more realistic.
Yeah.
And
to give the impression of realism.
Yes, the impression of realism. And if, in fact, the Plastic Posse podcast latest episode features an interview with Alex Clark. And if you haven't listened to this interview and you're concerned about scale color, you should probably listen to it because he touches on it a little bit. I think he touches on it enough, actually. I don't know if one of the interviewers actually asked him about this or something kind of segued into it and he started talking about it. I don't recall off the top of my head, but he's not a fan of just adding white and lightening the colors.
Right.
And he was of the opinion that it was not the right thing to do, obviously.
Right.
What he does instead is he's a more neutral color to desaturate the colors. Because in his opinion, a 72nd scale model, and he's one of the foremost armor modelers in 72nd scale.
Yep.
Bar none.
Yep.
I don't know if he listens to the podcast or not, but if you do, Alex, there you go. That's what I see when I see your work. You know, he was talking about desaturating these colors to make things less toy-like.
Yeah.
To make it look more the size it was supposed to be. What about you, Dave? What do you think about this?
Well, and that is, okay, scale color, in theory, they say, you know, depending on X scale, you add X amount of white. That doesn't work. There is, for many of the reasons Mike just outlined, just simply using the rote formula. In fact, there have been articles in Fine Scale and any number of magazines about this. It just doesn't work. But it certainly is true that as your scale gets smaller, you need to lighten the paint. But in order to give a good impression of the model, to try and create the impression of realism. So as you get smaller and smaller scales, you want to add more of a lighter color. And I think the key is what you mentioned. Instead of using white, a lighter complementary color. And it depends on what color you're painting. A light, sometimes it calls for a light gray. Sometimes it calls for a light tan. And this is a lot of that color wheel theory, that I wish in college, I had the opportunity in college to take color theory courses, and I really wish I had, because I think there is something really good to be learned from those type of classes, particularly in this area where you're adding a lighter complementary color to lighten the color that you're actually painting. So I think my rule of thumb is, yes, if you're painting smaller scale, you need to lighten the paint that you're using. How much you need to lighten it and what you need to lighten it with is an area of wide discussion.
And I don't know if it's lightening, it's desaturation. I think that's not necessarily the same thing.
Yes, you are correct. You are correct. That's right. Lightening is probably a crude description of what you're actually trying to do. Desaturation is probably a better description, although most people, when looking at it, would think of it as lightening.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. So, listeners, what do you think on this one? I don't know. I don't buy the distance argument, because I don't think that really is what you're doing when you make a scale model. I don't think you build a 72nd scale model to give the impression of viewing the real life object at some other distance. I think that's not true.
Yeah, but at the same time, it still is true that, you're building something and you're trying to give the impression of making it a much larger, making it appear to be a full-size item. So, we need to find a really good, not necessarily a modeler, although I'd like to find a modeler, somebody who came up through, say, art school like Mark Cable did, and have a deep, in-depth discussion about color theory, color wheel, scale color, all of that stuff. Because I think there's a huge area to be mined in that discussion.
Up next is Brandon Jacobs. Brandon's from Texas, and he's Agent 003, I think.
Yep. We need to have badges made up.
We do.
Yep.
Or license to chill.
Exactly. License to chill. I like that even better.
Well, he was looking at the photos from the indie show.
Mm-hmm.
He says not even 24 hours after the show, there's a YouTube channel called Throttle Power.
Yep.
That did a great job with the photo essay and plugging the show.
Yep.
It says they definitely deserve a plug on the Mojo, so there you go. There's the plug. Throttle Power on YouTube. So those little gray bases that they use for builds that do not have a base, those made the display of those models look so good. What were those made out of, and do you know where they got them?
I think, okay, and this is a complete guess. In fact, if you look at one of my videos...
They're synthetic floor tiles is what they are.
Is that what they are?
That's what they are, yeah.
See, I thought they were artboard.
Nope.
Okay, synthetic floor tiles.
Yep.
If you look at one of my videos that I posted in the dojo, you can actually see the modeler using, he's putting down his models and he's sliding one under one of his models. And I thought it actually was a gray artboard, but you say it's synthetic floor tile?
It's a floor tile. I asked him about it one year because I had to put one under mine, and it's a great idea because it gives the judges something to manipulate and touch and turn on the show table, and don't have to touch the entry.
Right.
And I don't know if that's primarily why they do it. Maybe some of the folks from Indy could chime in and let us know exactly what that is in the event that I'm wrong, but I think that's what they are. Tell us the rationale for using them and what they are specifically. And because Brandon's thinking he wants to use something like this for Winter Bliss next year.
Yeah, I would love to hear. Listen, we got a lot of the guys from Indy who listen. So especially a lot of the guys who are deep involved in the actual contest. So I'm sure one of them will hear this. Please reach out and email us and let's talk about that.
And finally, from the email side, Mr. Michael Karnaka from New York City.
I always look forward to his questions.
I was wondering if you've ever suddenly saw a photo or film that made you want to drop what you were currently working on and seek that subject out as the next modeling project.
Oh, heck yes.
Yeah, well, he's tempted by NASA's test F-15, number 837, which has got the funky wings on it.
Uh-huh.
And then the red, white, and blue scheme.
Yep.
There's a conversion from BAM models out of France.
Oh, really?
Apparently there is.
Wow, I'm surprised.
But he says that the price is keeping him respectable at the moment.
Oh, come on. Compared to a bass boat, it's cheap.
That's right. Well, Dave, what do you think? You've already said it. Give me an example.
God, this happens to me too often. I'll watch, again, you and I have had a discussion. Should you have your computer in your model room? Does it distract? Does it add? Do the pluses outweigh the minuses? I will watch, YouTube videos, either, any number of folks, Mark Felton Productions, Drakenafel, just any, our friend Evan, any number of videos that I find immediately inspiring. In fact, I'll give you one of the latest ones. Special Hobby released a B-10 W-139, which was an early pre-war World War II bomber. And Mark Felton Productions released a video that I had no clue. Oh God, you continue to learn. If you're a World War II fiend, you continue to learn new stuff about World War II. It turns out that prior to 1942 and the Doolittle raids, two Chinese B-10s dropped not bombs, but leaflets on a couple of Japanese cities in 1938 or 39. And that was just such a great story, by the way. If you haven't, just go to YouTube, Mark Felton Productions, and then once you get there, search for first Doolittle raid or the first raid on Japan, and you'll find it. It's a great video. But yeah, that happens to me quite often. What I need to do is exercise more discipline so I don't go off down those roads. How about you?
German eBay, hands down.
I was going to say, with you, it's German eBay photographs.
Yeah, I was looking at a photo of it's an interesting picture. In fact, I bought it. I was looking at it actually in my hands, not on German eBay, but it came from German eBay. It's a Soviet T-60 light tank that's slewed off into this shell crater. And there's a German DMOG D7 half-track that's pulled off to the road, and the guys are out looking at this tank down the hole, right?
Right.
But it's got all these really crazy markings on it. It's got multicolor unit markings on it and a slogan painted on it. And I got the Optivisor out, and I'm trying to make it out. And I'm like, man, I need to look around, see if there's like more photos of this, either this tank or more from the same unit, because this would be the one I'd want to do.
Yeah.
And then I start thinking, oh yeah, Mini Art got a T60, and there's a spare wheel on the engine deck. You can see it's the early version with the spoked wheels instead of the solid wheels, and Mini Art makes one of those. And
then you started checking for who makes 3D printed aftermarket tracks and photo etch
and all that stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep.
You know, that kind of ties into, Dave, to what we we still do and often do and have for years, called virtual modeling.
Yep.
Where either books or magazines or the internet or whatever. Yeah. You're doing a lot of stuff and it's fun and it makes you happy, but you're really you're not building a model.
Yep. But you're planning a build in your mind. And I don't want to poo-poo that too much. There is some satisfaction. You know what I'm reminded of in regard to this discussion? I think this was probably on a DM with Jim and Ian and Evan and Chris and all. The photograph you have of the Russian civilian pulling the boots off of a dead Russian soldier, and how evocative that photograph is, and how I don't want to say inspiring in a bad way, but how you can see that picture and it's something that it brings out so much that I can see how that would be something that you would be compelled to model, to try and capture the emotion in that image.
Well, Dave, that's about it for the email side of things. What do you got on the direct message from Facebook?
Well, I've got quite a few. Our friend Chris Meddings, who I want to thank because he did a decal sheet of 72nd scale and 48th scale F4 Cs and Ds from the Vietnam War, and he sent one of each sheet to me, and I want to thank him for that. Thank you. They're very nice looking. But he also actually did something that I thought was really interesting. You know, he does the Models for Ukraine books, and he's raised a lot of money for charity with those books. He actually took a couple of copies of them, sent them over to Ukraine to be autographed by some notable Ukrainian modelers, which, by the way...
And companies.
And boy, you know, there are some really good Ukrainian modelers. I'm here to tell you there's some talent in that country on the modeling front. So he had these things autographed, and he's actually selling them online, again, to raise money for the charities that provide relief to Ukrainian civilians who've been displaced by the war. So he actually let me know that, and he asked if he could share it to the dojo, and we, of course, told him that he could. But if you haven't gotten Models for Ukraine 1 or 2, and you would like an autographed copy, autographed by Ukrainian modelers and manufacturers, take a look at that. And that's a discussion piece. That's something you'll have in your collection that very few people will have. Next, last episode, you'll remember that my modeling fluid of choice was Upper Canada's Dark Ale, and I couldn't remember who gave it to us, and there's a good reason I couldn't remember. Bruce Worrell came over to the dojo, our Airbnb, after the show. I think they're both nights, yeah. During the festivities at some point, he slipped a couple of the Upper Canada Dark Ales into the fridge for us to take back. And he may have mentioned it. I don't remember whether he did or not. But when I asked for whoever had done that, he identified himself. So thank you, Bruce.
Bruce the Model Noob on...
Bruce the Model Noob on YouTube.
And Facebook.
And Facebook. Adam Greenwald reached out to tell us, you know how we've been saying that everybody and their brother is now releasing a paint line?
Yeah.
He was pointing out that ICM have now released their own paint line. At some point, this is going to hit market saturation. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why it's going on.
Well, it's going. I think part of it's going on because somehow it all finds its way to North America and maybe Western Europe as well. I don't know, but certainly the United States and probably Canada. But in the markets this stuff originates from, a lot of these lines we see may not be available. And ICM paint in Ukraine may be the cat's meow, man. I don't know.
Simply because you can't get much of anything else in there.
Can't get anything else.
Yeah.
Or maybe. I don't know.
That's a great question. And maybe that's one explanation for this, but something is going on where it has become much easier to release a paint line for any manufacturer or for any company. And finally, Michael Karnaka, besides giving you a nice photograph of a Katusha on the back of, Gas 6?
Zis 6.
Zis 6. Besides him sending a copy of that along, and we all see this all the time, and we understand it, but it's always it brings a little bit of chuckle. He sent a photograph of a World War II war memorial plaque in front of an M113 armored personnel carrier, which, okay, I get the spirit. Yeah, it's good that we memorialize, never forget, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, there is a little bit of a disconnect when you see something like that.
Well, when you have the knowledge to know, yeah.
Yes, that's right. And probably most people who see that won't have any idea. But it's always funny. Michael always manages to send us on DM something interesting or entertaining in addition to his questions emailed in every time.
Is that it?
Yep, that's it. This is the point in the episode where I ask you, if you're done listening to the episode, you'll go ahead to whatever podcast app you listen on and give us 5 stars, rate the podcast. It helps in all of the algorithms to drive us to be more visible. Also, if you will, if you've got a modeling friend who doesn't listen to podcasts, and this actually came up at Indy, where somebody came up to us with a friend, and they had turned the friend on to listening to Plastic Model Mojo, and the friend had never listened to podcasts before, didn't know how, didn't know anything about it. So that is an important way for us to continue to grow. And Mike and I, behind the scenes, talk about the statistics, and we continue to grow, and we are pleased about that. And one of the best ways for that to happen is for you to recommend us to a modeling friend who doesn't listen to podcasts. Show them what it's all about. You may have to walk them through it. Please do that, because it really helps.
In addition to that, please check out the other podcasts in the model sphere. You can do that by going to www.modelpodcast.com. That's Model Podcast, plural, with an S. This is a consortium website set up with the help of Stuart Clark from the Scale Model Podcast up in Canada. And you go to this site and you can see all the banner links to all the other podcasts who are participating in this spirit of cross-promotion. And I encourage you to check all those out and see what they've got to offer. In addition to the podcast, we've got a lot of blog and YouTube friends out there. You want to check those out as well. We're going to recommend Mr. Jeff Groves, the Inch High Guy, the Inch High Guy blog.
We definitely are, because he was at Indy, and the big thing that one of the many big things you missed out at by not being able to make it to Indy was sitting with Inch at the table for a wide-ranging hour-and-a-half or 2-hour discussion. It was awesome, and we need to get up and see him sometime.
So check out Jeff's Inch High blog, Inch High Guy. Model airplane maker, Mr. Chris Wallace from Canada. Check out his blog and YouTube channel. Got a lot of good things going on there. And the big thing Chris has got going on is he's about to do Model Workshop 2.0, and we hope to be talking to him about that later once he gets moved into his new house and gets his new model room up and running. Hopefully we'll talk about that a little bit. Sprue Pie with Frets, Stephen Lee, long and short form blog. Check it out. Steve's always got something good to say about the hobby, something interesting to say about the hobby. It's always worth checking up with him and see what he's got going on. Jim Bates at Scale Canadian TV. Now, Jim's been...
he's been dropping them.
Jim, keep it up.
Yes, absolutely.
Scale Canadian TV. And finally, Mr. Evan McCallum, our friend from Ottawa, Mr. Panzermeister 36, been dropping a few episodes of late, and encourage you to check it out. He's got a lot of great content.
Yeah, I keep wondering if he's got a brass toothpick sponsorship yet. If you haven't joined IPMS USA, and at least one member came up to me at Indy and told me that I finally wore them down and they ended up joining the national organization, thank you. I think it was John. Thank you, John. In any event, if you're not a member of your national IPMS organization, IPMS USA, IPMS Canada, IPMS Mexico, IPMS Norway, whatever, please join your national IPMS organization. They are the framework that helps run IPMS and run modeling in the various countries, helping people put on contests. There's a lot that the national organizations do. They supply insurance in some cases. They supply seed money in some cases. They definitely supply advertising. It's a small investment given the cost of most kits these days. So go ahead and join. And when you do, shoot me an email or a Facebook DM to let me know you have, because that's always something that I enjoy.
All right, Dave, let's have a word from our sponsor. Plastic Model Mojo is now brought to you by Model Paint Solutions, your source for Harder Steenbeck airbrushes, David Union power tools, and laboratory-grade mixing, measuring, and storage tools for use with all your model paints, be they acrylic, enamels, or lacquers. Check them out at www.modelpaintsolutions.com. Come and make it in Texas, Dave.
Listen, nothing got me so jazzed for the Nationals as going to Heritage Con, because the buzz I got from Heritage Con was very, very similar to the buzz I get from a National.
Well, hopefully that's sustained, because we are 106 days away from the IPMS National Convention in San Marcos, Texas.
We're going to break 100 by next episode.
That's right.
That's
we'll be there.
Awesome.
It is awesome.
Yes.
And speaking of awesome, Brandon Jacobs chimed in again, and he wants to talk about baseball and the Nationals.
All right.
So if you like baseball and you're traveling to the IPMS National Convention in San Marcos, Texas during the first weekend there of August, there's some baseball to be had along the way.
When I went to the Nationals in Albuquerque in 1995, I actually went to the AAA expansion team game for Albuquerque the night before the Nationals began. It was awesome. So if you are a baseball fan, some of these AA and AAA teams are really great to see.
If you're in the Houston area prior to the show, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday nights that's July 31st, August 1st, and August 2nd. There's some day games there and night games. The Houston Astros are playing the Cleveland, he says Indians, but I think it's the Guardians now.
It is the Guardians now, and you'll get to, if you go to those games, you'll get to hear trash cans banging. And, and only baseball people will get that joke.
So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, July 31st, August 1st, and August 2nd. There's 3 games if you're coming from the Houston area or are in the Houston area prior to the National Convention and want to check out some baseball. You can check out that series of games. Or if you're in the Dallas region, the Texas Rangers will be playing the Chicago White Sox Tuesday, August 1st, and Wednesday, August 2nd. So there's a lot of baseball to be had if you're in the San Marcos area prior to the show.
You know, there's nothing better on a really nice night, sitting out, drinking a beer and eating a hot dog, watching either professional baseball or AAA or AA baseball. It's just awesome.
Dave, it's the Bench Top Halftime Report brought to us by Tackett Z. TackettZ.com, the must-have tools for the model maker. You can go to TackettZ.com and check out all the stuff Ed's got to offer and what he's got coming up. TackettZ.com. Dave, what's on your bench?
On my bench is new build. It's the Academy F8, which this is the first build under the new build quicker theory. It's also the build for the Model Geeks MIG Killer build. It's coming along really well. Now, I'll tell you what, I've been spoiled by that Arma P51. It's only been released a year or two ago. This Academy kit is like 10 years old at least. And the engineering differences and the fit differences are amazing. There has been a revolution in model making and mold making, and I'm not sure we appreciate how big a change has occurred. Because I'm putting this kit together, and it's not a bad kit. Don't get me wrong. It fits well. But compared to something that was released in 2021, it's you can see the differences. It's a little bit of adjustment for me to go ahead and build it, but I'm building it. I'm having fun. It's going together great. And in addition to that, the first of the repairs of the damaged kits from Hamilton, the AS1 kennel, is almost complete, and now I'm just about to the point where I need to paint it for the areas that got sanded, and then I'll be able to put it in a case and move to the next of the damage victims, which I think will be the Arma P51, and try and get these knocked out so that I can, get on. But it's nice that I've got the F8 that I'm able to work on the construction on, and then try and switch off and do damage repair to the models that I've got that need to be fixed before they can go back in the case. I'm making myself do that. I will be honest with you, a lot of times in the past, when a model's gotten damaged during transit, I've put it back in the case and just let it sit there, and always intended to go back and repair it, and then end up never doing that. So this is part of my model growth experience. So how about you?
I've been pretty busy.
I know. I've seen some of your busy.
Despite the model life, work-life balance, or whatever we called it earlier.
Yep.
I've managed to spend quite a bit of time at the bench.
Yep. And make progress, too.
First, we'll talk about the E16 Paul and the catapult.
Yep.
I'd hope to have the entire catapult weathered at this point, but I'm not there. But I'm pretty close. I've got all the pin washing done on the catapult boom. Really, really happy with the way it turned out. It was a lot of work because I was fighting that wash tooth and nail. It was a MIG ammo, just black wash, and I don't know if it was the variation in surface smoothness or what, but sometimes that stuff works great, the wash, and sometimes it just tides out and just makes a mess of things. And I don't know why on this one model it was giving me both those responses. But it all turned out for the good, and it's all, the pin wash is on. It's been clear coated again with a satin. I'm ready to do some more of the oil paint work on to put some other colors on there, some dirt and grime and some rust tones. In addition to the catapult boom, I've also painted the tower that the boom goes onto. It's the kit turntable mounted to a 3D printed cylinder, essentially.
Yep.
Did a lot of undercoating. I primed it black and then did a lot of undercoating in, like sky gray and white, and maybe I think there's some Tamiya buff under there as well. Before I sprayed the base coat, the base color, the Curie Arsenal gray from Tamiya. Yep. Sprayed that really thin, like 90% thinner, 10% paint, and built it up really slowly to cover up all the underpainting.
And this is one of the things that you missed by not going to Indy. And no, that's not an attempt to make you feel guilty or anything.
Yeah, right.
Inch and I sat there and we had a long, long discussion about the fact that, particularly airbrushing, but I think all of the modeling skills are perishable skills. And that if you're not doing them regularly, you lose some of the skill that you have. So I think that while you're working on the KV85 doing build stuff, the fact that you're doing not only pin washing but airbrushing on the E16 project helps keep your skills sharp with an airbrush.
Well, in addition to the painting of the catapult, I've planned out a base and submitted that to our friends at Bases by Bill.
Oh, yeah.
For consideration. It's going to look really nice. Now, that may be putting the cart before the horse.
I like it. Well, and I like the ambition. That tells me you're going to finish this thing.
I hope so. So, more oil paint work on the catapult, and then I got to get started on the plane. I'm scared, but I just got to do it.
You just pull the trigger. You'll start doing it, and then you go from there. It's honest to God. Once you start, you'll be shocked at how easy it is.
Well, assuming that goes as planned, I've also been working on the KV85, and I've got the track runs finished. They're completely assembled. The lengths of the runs have been adjusted to facilitate the look I want of the finished model versus the terrain I'm going to pose it on. I've got to get back to the base and make some permanent decisions on mounting the roadbed and the railroad track, and really before I can effectively pose the suspension, I need that to be locked down airtight.
I honestly, I think you almost need the base to be, while not completely complete, you at least need the base to be basically complete in order to be able to put that down.
All the rough terrain forms and the railroad track can be down.
Yeah.
I don't know that I need like the earth, the actual fill material on top of all the staged terrain, all the fake stuff you can't see once it's buried under the groundwork, right?
Right.
I think I can pose it on the facade, if you will, and then add all that stuff and get it to work in the end. I think that's going to work. I hope it works.
Yep.
When I'm not doing the suspension stuff, the tracks, etc., I started looking at the turret. Now, the turret for this project is an A-resin kit. It's a Russian manufacturer. I bought this thing a couple of years ago from a supplier in Indianapolis, Wanamaker Models,
right,
or Wanamaker Hobbies. It's an interesting. It's an old school resin upgrade, right? So it's basically what I intended to do with the original shot at this KV85 that I started like 4 years ago, or longer, really. Eastern Express kit, right? The very rudimentary. The turret was pretty rough. This A-resin kit is actually a remodeled, retextured, redetailed Eastern Express turret.
Sure. Well, a lot of the cottage manufacturers do that. They take the kit part that's wrong and use that as the basis for accurizing and then casting the accurization.
And for the most part, it's as good, if not better, than what I would have probably pulled off on my own doing the same thing, which was my original plan to begin with. So that kind of worked out. For a few dollars, I saved myself a lot of work, right?
Right.
There's one area though that I'm gonna fix. I just got to get up the nerve to do it. On the turret roof, there's 2 periscopes, and in typical fashion for armor, Soviet armor that era, that the periscopes are mounted to the inside of the turret roof, right?
Right.
Through screws that are attached from the exterior of the turret roof.
Yes, you and I were discussing this last night, I think.
And the resin turret has accommodated that reality, but it's a little bit soft in the end. And what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to drill all those screw holes out and replace those with some photo etch screw heads. Now, the screw heads I'm going to use are from an outfit called Alliance Model Works. And I don't know if this set's still available. It's a LW35026. And it's basically various sizes of Phillips head and flathead screws. And what's neat about this set is they're etched on a self-adhesive backing.
Which means no runners.
There's no fret attachment to the screw heads, so
and
you can just
that when you're talking about something that's round
and small,
the fact that you've got no runner to try and clip off and then round out is
it's huge.
Yeah, huge.
So I don't know. Alliance Model Works. If you need screw heads, check it out, because I think these are really going to fit the bill. I think that's my bench, Dave. I don't think I've been working on anything else.
Well, that's enough. You're working, man. I'm glad to see it. So, Mike, this is the point where I think in this episode we're going to talk about our faves and yawns.
Oh man,
stuff is getting released at a ridiculous rate, to the point where you almost can't keep up with everything coming out, particularly when you add in all the 3D stuff. So,
no doubt. Well, it's a fave, but it's also, okay. I don't know what, it's not a yawn, but it's a fave and it's something else. I don't know. Maybe a reservation.
Okay.
Just today, the day we were recording this, which is April 18th, TACOM did their typical Ghost profile announcement of 3 new kits.
Oh, did they? I didn't see this.
Well, these 3 kits by the profile are going to be a Hetzer early, mid, and late production variant.
Well, that makes sense.
With interiors.
Oh, you and I have talked about interior, particularly on a Hetzer. Can you open a Hetzer up much?
Actually, you actually can open it up quite a bit. The hatches for the loader and commander open up to reveal a pretty good view of the fighting compartment interior anyway. And, the engine decks could be opened if you wanted to do that. But, Tamiya's Hetzer's pretty good. Some of the others aren't bad either, but I've been planning in my mind an early Hetzer. There's one in particular I want to do. And this just adds to the excitement of that. I'm really curious as to what these come out with and how good they are. Now, a lot of people, the Hetzer's like another Tiger or Panther, but I don't know. I like this vehicle a lot more than those. So we'll see what they do. What about you?
Well, my first fave is a company called Aztec Models is releasing a 72nd scale Baroth TB2. This is the drone that the Ukrainians purchased from Turkey in large numbers and has been featured in a lot of videos in the coming out of Ukraine. Obviously, as a well-used combat drone or UAV or whatever we want to call it, really popular. Now, obviously, in 72nd scale, this is not going to be a large kit, but I'm glad to see it because I definitely want to add this to the collection. How about you, fave or yawn?
I've got another fave, and it's another kind of dichotomous situation.
Okay.
Well, my next fave / yawn, or not yawn, but something else. I don't know what to call it. DOSWorks. DOSWorks, in partnership with Amusing Models, is releasing the 90 millimeter Kanonen Jagdpanzer from the Bundeswehr.
Okay, and I know what that vehicle is.
And it's one that's always interested me. It's something else besides a fave because I have the Revell kit.
Yep, I remember.
And
that kit.
I have just within the year purchased the perfect scale model bow resin glacis and upper superstructure roof upgrade kit for it, along with their road wheel upgrade kit for it, along with their PE and Pioneer tool upgrade kit for it, and the tracks for it.
So everybody who's going to buy this kit needs to send you a big thank you because you personally are responsible for the kit being made.
I don't know. If this is new tool, I assume it is. Maybe I'll buy another one. I don't know, but I'm excited to see this vehicle because it's the only time it's ever been done other than the Revell kit in 35th scale is a Tamiya, one of those. I don't know. They had friction motors in them. It's like a 156 scale thing that they did years and years ago in the late 60s, early 70s. It's kind of the last of the Jagdpanzers, right?
Right. As far as I know, no one other than the Bundeswehr, I don't think other than West Germany, anybody ever produced post-war a assault gun. The SU-122 and 152. I mean, those were both developments in Russia at the end of the war. I don't know that anybody.
Well, they did do an assault gun on the T-55.
Okay.
And then they've got the ASU 87,
right?
the
But those
85, and the ASU 57.
57. Those are kind of specialized airborne vehicles,
but, not a fully armored,
right?
Frontline kind of toe to toe with tanks kind of vehicle.
Assault gun, classic assault.
Or tank destroyer, yeah.
Right.
So I'm curious as to see what this one looks like.
Well, good.
It's gonna be fun. Because of the shortcomings of the Revell kit and the limited availability or expense of the perfect scale model bow resin upgrades. You don't see many of those things built.
Yep.
This will probably change that.
Yep.
What you got?
My second fave is decal sheet. I know everybody's could be shocked by that. 72nd scale decal sheet, but hold on to it. 72nd scale armor decal sheet. And it is Star Decals, 72nd scale sheet called War, Conflicts, and Special Operations in Ukraine, Part 1, which covers vehicles from 2012 to 2022, Ukrainian vehicles. And this thing has everything from BMP-2s, which, by the way, are one of my favorite vehicles. They're just awesome vehicles. To the MTLB with the ZSU 23-2 on the back, to the little Gaz. It looks like a minibus. And it's awesome vehicles, neat color schemes, neat markings. I think we're going to be modeling the Ukraine conflict for many years to come. And that decal sheet certainly looks like something I might want to pick up. How about you, Mike?
I got a yawn.
Okay, give me a yawn.
It's not a kit, though.
Okay.
The latest Micromark catalog showed up in the mail a couple days ago. And on the front cover is this contraption they're marketing now called Brush Cam. It's a paintbrush with an attachment on it for I guess it's a Bluetooth micro camera.
Right.
That you can connect to your phone and give you a close-up view on your phone of what you're painting with the brush. I don't know what to say, man.
You know what? There many years ago at an IPMS Nationals, they did a parody of Fine Scale Modeler where they had a laser sight attachment for an airbrush. And this really reminds me of that.
Well, for $80, you can paint figures and watch it on your cell phone.
I'm not sure that would actually improve your painting.
I'm thinking the monoscopic view you're going to get is going to make it a little harder than I don't know. More power to them.
Right. If somebody buys this and tries it out, let us know what you think.
What do you got, Dave?
Okay, this is a fave and a yawn. So you've set a trend. You're a trendsetter. Company called 308 Bits makes a 72nd scale set of resin bits for the Razor Crest from the Mandalorian, including engine exhausts, cockpit, back wall, and believe it or not, and I am not making this up, the Razor Crest toilet. So that I'm not sure that you can see it if you install it, but those are the things they make for the Razor Crest. And the Razor Crest is popular, Mandalorian's popular. These things really look good. The yawn part of them is they're available through Shapeways. And I'll be honest with you, at this point, I would not be buying anything through Shapeways. The technology has passed them by, and unless they upgrade, their printing. Now, maybe you'd be able to reach out to these people and get purchase the files themselves. So if you've got your own 3D printer and you want to do a Razor Crest from The Mandalorian, these really do look like good upgrades, all of them. But I just wouldn't recommend getting them through Shapeways.
All right, Dave, that's the faves and yawns.
That's it, man.
Getting the right size base for your model, diorama, or vignette can be difficult and time-consuming. Bases by Bill has the solution with their all-new custom-sized display bases. Offering sizes of 4 to 30 inches, you can choose the dimensions you want and get the size you need every time. And they can laser engrave the base with a unit emblem or text to your specifications. Better still, shipping is included within the lower 48 states. Built by modelers for modelers, Bases by Bill has bases and display cases for any type of model and for any size. Visit their website at basesbybill.com to see their products or to get your own custom-built base or display case quote. Use the code MOJO at checkout to apply a 15% listener discount to your order. That code again is MOJO for 15% off. Bases by Bill for all your model display needs.
Well, Bob, thanks for that self-motivated redo on the ad. Appreciate that. Obviously, we like it. We put it in the episode.
Yep.
Sounds good. Well, Dave, our special segment tonight kind of has a history from our last episode with Dr. Strangebrush.
By way of Heritage Con.
By way of Heritage Con. Now, that episode with Dr. Strangebrush, we talked about scribing. And Mr. John Chung from Canada, from Toronto area, messaged us and said how much he appreciated that episode because anyone who's been paying attention to Facebook in the model sphere knows that John Chung is building a 72nd scale Revell space shuttle, and he's scribing every single thermal tile on the skin of that vehicle on his model. He said he appreciated that episode and thought scribing was a underrepresented technique or topic of conversation in the model sphere. And that said, we went to Heritage Con and we met John at Heritage Con, and he cordially came up and introduced himself, and we had a little conversation there and expressed his appreciation for the podcast and our appreciation back to him for his modeling prowess, and particularly this project. And we decided to have him on the show. And Dave, it's a pretty interesting conversation.
Yep.
So how about we get into it?
You got it.
Well, Dave, a little Heritage Con followed us back from Canada.
Yes, it did. Well, actually, a lot of Heritage Con followed me back because I spent some money, but that's not what you're talking about.
That's not what I'm talking about. Our guest tonight goes by the YouTube handle of Scale Scriber, and if you've been paying attention on Facebook much, you've probably noticed a pretty involved build of a 72nd scale space shuttle with a lot of scribing, hence the name Scale Scriber. Our guest tonight is Mr. John Chung from the Great White North of Canada. John, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. Thanks, Mike and Dave. Appreciate the invitation once again. It's quite the honor.
It's mutual. We enjoyed meeting you at Heritage Con. Get that out of the way. What'd you think of that show?
Oh, you know what? It's way too many people and way too little time. I barely got to speak with you gentlemen over there, and it was overwhelming. It was also my first show since COVID.
Oh wow!
So it's been 3 years. It was really good to see people and friends I haven't seen in a long time.
That's true. It was our first time up that way to that show, and we just had a blast because we've made a lot of friends in the Ottawa area since we started the podcast, and it's amazing because on the way up we were talking because we had a long time in the car, so we had to talk to each other.
Yeah.
In 2020, none of this would have even been conceivable for us because we didn't know any of the people that we were actually sharing a Airbnb with. We didn't even know those people in 2020, and now they're some of our best friends. So glad to have you among those, John. It's just a pleasure to have you on, and let's talk about this space shuttle. I know you were on the Sprue Cutters Union a couple times, and you talked about it a little bit. We'll direct the folks to those other interviews so they can get the full dish on that. But I know you'd built one of these as a child, I believe, if I remember correctly, and this is your second go at this kit.
Yeah, that's correct. Just before I get into that, I don't have a YouTube channel, so my work are on Facebook.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say YouTube?
Yeah,
Yes.
so in case someone tried to look me up on YouTube, you're going to be sorely disappointed. But yeah, you are correct. This is the second go that, for me, at this particular kit. It's a 72nd scale monogram space shuttle that they released circa 1980, I believe.
Yep.
And yeah, and it's being around for about 30 some odd years until Monogram got acquired by Revell. And Revell, since they had a competing mold of their own space shuttle, they essentially stopped the Monogram release. So at this time, you can't find it brand new. You have to find them on eBay, secondhand market, model shows. But it is the kit that I built 30 years ago. So quite a trip down memory lane.
Quick question. I know that kit when it first came out back in the 80s, because it's people don't first of all, congratulations on building in the correct scale. Number two, I know when that kit came out in the 80s, because of its size, and it is big, had the reputation of having a fair amount of warp. So did you encounter that with either of the kits that you bought?
Okay, so you gotta remember, I was probably like 10, 12 years old. I just got into model building. It was probably the third model kit I painted. And I did so with those small squirt testers and enamel bottles, with those testers white brushes.
Yep.
With the god-awful black bristles. So
Yep.
for a 12-year-old kid, this thing was incredible. Yeah. I didn't know anything about filling scenes or warpage, and I was just happy to have a large model of a spaceship that could fly around the living room. This time around, however, I did encounter warpages. In fact, I had to do quite a number of structural mediations, I guess, remediations, in form of bulkheads and keel beams and stiffeners across the entirety of the primary fuselage.
Yeah.
I detailed this with the post about a couple months ago, where I had to take a 1/8 inch thick sheet styrene piece and essentially build up keel beams from nose to tail, so I can butt rest the entire lower fuselage, which by this time, before I fixed it, looked like just endless amount of sine waves going from front to back.
You know what sine waves are, Dave?
Yes, I know what sine waves are. I do remember high school science.
Apologies for the technical jargon.
Yeah.
Hey, that's all right. He's a lawyer. I'm not.
John, speaking of which, what do you do for a living? Just so I know your background.
Right. I'm currently a spacecraft systems engineer.
So you're a Mike. You're another Mike. You're an engineer.
Yeah, that's correct. I play with big spacecraft during the day and play with small spacecraft at home. And one of those guys.
Well, one of the things that I've just found intriguing is the scribing. I mean, that's the Scale Scriber Facebook page, and I've been watching this for a long time, John. And I know you've got a pretty solid aircraft modeling background, and you first contacted us after we talked about scribing with our Dr. Strangebrush. And I tell you, Dr. Miller gave us his insight on scribing, and you've got this project, John, that is just over the top. I have to imagine I can't imagine a scribing task that is going to ever eclipse this one. I mean, it's possible, I guess, but when you decide to rebuild this thing, how much scribing experience did you have before you took this guy on?
Well, thanks for the compliment. I to start with, I don't wish this upon the worst of my enemies.
And yet you voluntarily inflicted on yourself.
Yeah, nostalgia has a way to work into our lives and projects and those sorts. But to answer your question, I've been building models for as long as I can remember, and I guess as a result of that, I grew up with some pretty crude model kits that nobody will want to touch. This in this golden age of scale modeling.
Sure.
I built. We all remember when Dynavector's Vacuum kits were the best in class for some of the subjects that we grew up loving, right? So that's the sort of stuff that I had content with. With that said, I had a lot of practice scribing as a result, and I was able to hone my skills over the years, starting with essentially a broken X-Acto knife that I just kind of cobbled together from my tool chest. The same way that you would use X-Acto knife to kind of scrape away plastic and to basically forge into any broken panel lines and surface details. I started with that, and I was very impressed at how comprehensive John Miller's interview was. Just because he had such not just the depth of knowledge, he had such a passion for the subject. And you could tell that he really understood the beauty of the craftsmanship. I was going to say joy of the craftsmanship, but I don't think this is something to rejoice over. No, having the experience of sort of the school of hard knocks, building up these really really crude kits and having to describe details that you've since lost. And I really appreciated him bringing up that back in the days, all we had were essentially tools that were from different trades, like dental tools, essentially. That some of the earliest scribing tools were that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I started with tools that were essentially dental tools. I remember going through half a dozen of those. I would get a new Scriber every few weeks just because I was wearing them out so quickly and was not using them the way that they were so used. And eventually I arrived at my current setup, which is really just a sewing needle in a simple pin vise. I happened upon the sewing needle as a result of doing some research on the internet, the bit of an internet that we had back 20 years ago when we had the preliminary forms of scale modeling forms. This is pre-hyperscale and like pre-aircraft resource center days.
Yeah.
I don't remember who or where, but someone just suggested, hey, why don't you try a sewing needle in a pin vise? They're dirt cheap, and if it doesn't work the my way, it doesn't hurt, right?
Right.
So that's where it grew from, and I've since grown to appreciate that tool in its simplicity and its versatility. And I was for some reason able to get good enough at it for me to trust it in my endeavor on this space shuttle project. That's a roundabout way of answering your question, if that's okay.
Let me ask you a step back question, a 40,000 foot view. When you're presented with a model like the space shuttle, raised panel lines, I know there are two basic approaches. One is to eliminate each raised panel line and then re-engrave it before you do the next one. Or there are other modelers who eliminate all of the raised surface detail and then rescribe everything from the start with a blank canvas. Which way did you do it?
That's a very good question. And to be completely honest, I didn't have to contend with that because there's basically next to no raised details on the monogram space shuttle model.
Okay.
The Rebel kit had raised surface details, thin panel lines that was sort of a crude attempt at addressing the thermal protection system of the tiles, but they were 3 or 4 times too big, so you couldn't have used them anyway.
Gotcha.
On the monogram kit, there was nothing. There was basically a faint raised outline for the demarcation between the black and white areas only, and was blank otherwise. There was no surface detail whatsoever.
So you had just a completely blank canvas to start from.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So it was both a blessing and a curse because you didn't have anything I didn't have anything to really start with to work from, but at the same time I didn't have to stand away anything, which can be a bit of a pain if all the raised details that are present are wrong to begin with, and there were a lot of things that were wrong with this kid to be.
I don't know. I would go the blessing route. Could you imagine if they put a bunch of tile profiles on there, either raised or engraved, and they were just a facsimile of they were just made up and wrong? Because I know you're going to great lengths to get this as right as you can get it, correct?
Yeah. And it's this is a project that I wanted to do right from years ago, and part of it was definitely a 40,000 feet decision of what I wanted to do with it from a detail standpoint, right? Like for some people, it's perfectly fine to simply paint black and white areas as they are. And for others, it's okay to go the deco route. There are decals you can purchase for space shuttles that essentially gives you a printed sort of surface detail of the tiles, the thermal protection systems. I don't know why, but I want to describe the entirety of the thermal protection system. I think I've always had it at the back of my mind. I don't think as a 16-year-old, I quite thought it through what the implications were. I just wanted to do it. And that kind of dictated my approach from the get-go. It's definitely not something that I would ask people to do to follow in my footsteps. Please plan your models out before you jump into a very deep lake that you can't get out of.
Well, I think in the end, you're going to have a superior result than at least just a normal 2D printed decal sheet, just using like color variations to show the tile. I think this might be ripe for some of this new 3-dimensional decal technology that is showing up now, that you could actually have a texture, right? You could actually have the demarcations between the tiles. But I think in the end, this is going to be super. Now, let me digress a minute. John, when I was in engineering school, we're talking about these tiles, right? My materials engineering class, my professor at the University of Tennessee actually had some involvement in the development of that material. And I remember he took us down to the engineering lab, and the furnace was already going, and we get down there and we all gather around, and he opens up the furnace and reaches in with his pair of tongs after he puts on these big gauntlets, and he pulls this shuttle tile out of the furnace and sets it down on a piece of ceramic or asbestos, maybe. I don't know what, but it's glowing red, right? He takes off his gauntlets and he picks it up with his bare hands. And we were all just gobsmacked at that point, because it's pretty amazing material. It really is. Even in 2023, I think.
That's pretty cool. So you actually worked with a professor who was involved in the development of the tiles.
It's kind of a glass wool. It's a spun glass material, and it's pretty amazing. But I digress. As really cool. As the cliche says. So, but that was my little story about these tiles, and it keeps me interested in your project actually, though, because I have that memory, and you're scribing all these things on this 70-second scale. And it's a big thing, right?
Yeah.
Oh God, that people don't realize how big this kid is.
What's your reference for the tile patterns and the layout? What are you using to get that the way you want it?
Oh, very good question. I need to thank all of your American taxpayers who contributed financially to my project.
You're welcome.
NASA is a publicly funded organization, and so is the Smithsonian. And NASA has a habit of making everything they do available for free to the public, and now on the internet as well.
Yeah, I think they're actually required by law to do so.
Yeah, they are. So I actually shared links to tile maps. They have tile maps for individual shuttles because they're all different, a little bit different to some degree. I was
Really?
able to download. Yeah.
The pattern on each individual shuttle was slightly different.
Yes, these are
That's
hand built vehicles. Like
well,
they're not
yeah,
production vehicles.
that's wild. I would never have thought that even on a hand built vehicle, you would have thought that there was, consistency across the fleet.
To a large degree, there is consistency across the fleet, especially when it comes to the black thermal tiles. The white areas are what evolved quite a bit over the life of the shuttle. They started out with just black and white tiles. And very early on, even before the first space shuttle mission, they were well into developing more cloth-like material that were made of ceramic strands. For instance, and if you can imagine, if you replace a large field of 100 tiles with just a single ceramic woven panel, that's going to make your life a lot easier from a maintenance standpoint and
Gotcha.
the durability standpoint. So over time, even as early as the within the first 10th flight of the space shuttle, I think Space Shuttle Challenger was started to be fitted with panels of these woven fabric to test out their durability. So by the time that Discovery, the third space shuttle, and Atlantis, the fourth space shuttle, were built, this was 84, 85. They were built with the primarily of the white area as these ceramic woven surface insulation, essentially, in lieu of the white tiles. You can still find some white tiles in certain areas for aerodynamic reasons. But yeah, the technology was just evolving so quickly back then. So that's why you have the variations in thermal protection system layout. And going back to your question about references, the NASA drawings are pretty decent, but you got to also remember over the years as the space shuttle operated and they were maintained, there were changes, there were updates, things have to be replaced and whatnot. So the best reference that I found was actually the 3D scan that the Smithsonian did. I think it was circa 2020. And they made the entire scan file available online for anyone to download. So I was able to grab that entire scan, and now I have the scan of the Space Shuttle Discovery on my hard drive, essentially. And that's not just the texture, that is the coloration as well. So I can zoom into a specific tile and know how it looks when the space shuttle was retired in terms of how it's faded, its coloration. You can zoom in and read out the serial number on each one of the tiles if you wanted to. That's the resolution that I was able to get off of this Smithsonian scan, and that is right now my primary and most useful reference material.
Well, I've been following you. You've been rebuilding the engine mounts and the aft end bulkhead under the vertical stabilizer.
Mm-hmm.
That's your most recent work, and I saw you had to redo a few things.
Just a few.
Just a few. I tell you, what is the end game here as far as you're having? You've mentioned already to redoing some of this internal structure to get the warpage out of it, to get this thing rigid. Is this an exterior only model, or are you going to have an open cargo bay? What are you hoping to do here?
I've kind of been avoiding this question a lot. People have asked me over time, and because I build so slow, I can sort of push it off. I don't really want to think about it because it's just, if I want to open up the payload bay, it's basically going to double the amount of work I need to do. And if I say I'm going to do an open payload bay, I kind of have this need to kind of carry through and be a man of my word. But I may just actually do that. So I'm going to admit on your podcast that I am seriously thinking about, like having a pipe up the behind and have the space shuttle basically up vertical.
Okay.
With the payload bay open. Because if I'm going to scribe all 25,000 tiles on this beast and the majority of it's going to be on the belly, there's no point having it on its landing gear where you can't see.
That's true.
On the bottom, right? And it's a space shuttle, so you kind of have to you have to show it in its natural environment, which is in space with the payload bay open.
That means you have to scratch build a Hubble Space Telescope to go with it, right?
Yeah, see, like, here's another thing, right? If I want to build it as a ink space, now I have to decide which mission I have to do, and now I have to go and research into the specific payload. Like, it just, the scope creep is not fun in
No,
any sort of way.
at work or at the hobby bench.
Exactly.
I can tell you were an engineer if I hadn't asked already. You used scope creep. That's definitely an engineer word.
Well, I guess what the impetus for my question was, you're doing all this structural work to get the warp out of it. In doing that, you haven't already short circuited the ability to have an open cargo bay because you put some bulkhead that didn't really exist in there to get some warp out of the model.
No, I've accounted for the eventuality. So if I need to go that route, I can still do it.
Okay. Well,
Yeah. But like if I can just digress a little bit, this kind of goes back to what you asked previously about the age of the kit and whether it's still warped. I want to touch upon accuracy. I know that the visible part, the describing of the tiles, it's probably what gets the most attention from people most of the time. But the
yes.
accuracy is also very important because I'll just use an example. The leading edge strakes on the space shuttle. The space shuttle is a double delta wing, so you have the wing itself, and you have the forward portion, which on airplane it's the leading edge extension.
Right.
But these are the forward delta part with the more drastic sweep. There's a cant to it. There's the angle at which it bites into the airstream matters, and that is too flat on the monogram model, and it gives a really weird look to it. So I want to fix that to give it the correct look when viewed from the front. However, that also was needed from a detail standpoint because I'm scribing essentially all the tiles as accurately as I can. I'm literally going in and counting the number of tiles and number of rows everywhere. And just so happened that the leading edge point of that strake on the port side, just below the crew catch, has about 3 tiles between the top of the strake and the bottom of the hatch. Now, if I didn't fix that pitch of the strake, those tiles would have been 2 or 3 times as long as they should have been, and that would have completely thrown off the geometry of the tile, or I would have to add additional rows in there to compensate for, which would have made it inaccurate from a tile map standpoint. So, everything kind of just percolates, and everything kind of affected each other. So even if I wanted to get away from a certain portion of the accuracy work, it'll come back to bite me if I don't deal with it early on enough. So that's an example that I would give in terms of why I'm doing so much work to not just detail the surface of the space shuttle, but also to address the structural and the accuracy standpoint of the model itself.
Well, there's also an example of you not doing some work, and I don't mean that in the pejorative. No. There was it was one of your Facebook posts, and folks were concerned about you doing all this work and then obliterating it by filling the seam lines, like joining the fuselage halves or however the kit goes together. And you made a comment about scribing, up to a safe distance around that stuff, and then not actually finishing that scribing until you've actually got the parts together. So you only have to scribe it once, essentially.
Yeah, that's correct. I just want to preface this by saying that I know most people ask this out of really, really good intentions, and I appreciate that. People are looking out for me. So it's an old kit, right? Any kit, the most modern Tamiya kit, you'll have to deal with joint lines and seams. This is a 1980s monogram kit, and you have a Grand Canyon in the middle of the fuselage joint. I made sure that I stopped myself to within a 1/4 inch of either side of the center joint, and I will mark out like the general outline of where things are, just to make sure that all the details will align. when I eventually go and fill in the in between areas. But I prefer to plan my builds out far ahead down the road, so that I when I go far into the future to where I need to exercise certain steps of a model, I won't it's not just I will may or may not have to redo a certain amount of work, but would I be hindered by the work I've done previously? If I were to not plan ahead and go ahead and scribe the models down to the joint, even if it's a really well put together joint, I would still be hesitant at let's say adding any internal doubler if I need to beef up the area, because the adhesive might seep into the scribing that I have done, and now the details may be softened, and now I have to go in and rework it anyway, and at that point I might have to rescribe. So like all these contingencies that I can think of in my mind, I try to imagine them so that I can plan ahead well enough. The bulkhead that I talked about previously is the same thing. A lot of it is not just to fix the warpage, but to fix how well parts come together. The monogram classic, it's probably like a 16th of an inch, if not thinner, across the entire lower fuselage. And on a large model, that doesn't give you a lot of strength, right? You
No, that's not very much at all.
Exactly. So now I have a keel beam that essentially is a quarter or half of an inch tall, that I can just glue the entire surface on both sides, and that's going to give me a really strong structural joint when I go ahead and put it together. So that's sort of my frame of mind when I try to approach these large drawn out projects, is to sort of talk about project management, right? Try to like imagine what can happen 2 years down the road and plan ahead.
John, let me now focus, instead of a big picture, a very tiny picture. Describe to me, you're going to scribe a line on this model, just a single panel line on this model. Walk me through the technique of doing so. Do you start with do you use scribing tape? Do you start by drawing the line in pencil? What is your technique for scribing just a regular panel line that you're going to put onto the model?
That's a really good question. I appreciate you asking that. This model is large. The surfaces are devoid of details. There's not a lot of geometric references that you can base upon to ascertain where a certain line is. So what I would do is to first understand if I want to scribe that line or not. It sounds interesting because the answer is obviously yes, I would need to scribe that line. But if I were to scribe that line, what would I need to determine its location? And now I start looking around. I'm going to use another example, that is the forward fuselage of the space shuttle. On the side, there are these black area of tiles where it sort of translates into the white area on top of the nose. And that demarcation between the black and white area is wrong on the monogram kit. So there are a few features that I can base it off of. I can base it off the window. I can base it off of where the cargo bay starts. I can base it off where the landing gear bay ends. So as you can see, now I'm starting to build a picture where if I assume everything is wrong, none of those features are exactly where they should be on the actual space shuttle, I can start to negotiate the accuracy of, if I were to move it a little bit closer to the window, but a little bit too far from the landing gear bay, for instance, how would it affect the other features I need to put in? Once I have that determined, I start drawing in the locations with a pencil. I use a soft leaded pencil just because it's soft. It allows me to not have to put so much pressure on the pencil as it were, which is very useful if I want to draw over a soft filler, like putty or just a surfacer.
Do you use any sort of straight edge to draw that line with that pencil? Do you use tape or ruler or a aluminum template, or what do you use to draw that line?
Yeah, so I have metal templates. I use Haskell tri-tool templates. There are the straight
Gotcha.
type that
Yeah.
comes in 3 different bands with different
Yeah.
patterns in them. I also use the curvilinear ones
Right.
that allows me to negotiate different curves and surface contours. I try to stay away from adhesive pack, I guess, tapes or templates, just because I find that oftentimes I will need to nudge it just a little bit, and if it's adhesive, there's a bit of a grip on the surface, and I'll need to put in and use a bit of a shear, and that may not be ideal. And if I were to remove that adhesive tape, sometimes it may rip off any like loose putty or surface filler that may not be gripping as well to the surface. So that's what I do.
So you've drawn the line where now you're I assume going to actually begin to scribe into the plastic. You just grab your needle and a pin vise and go to town, or what?
That's actually exactly what I do. I grab my needle and the pin vise and I set the template down to where I want it to be. And this is actually exactly why I use a leaded pencil, because the diameter of the leaded pencil, the mechanical leaded pencil, is approximately the same diameter as the needle. So I can
Gotcha.
learn to offset the position of the template such that the edge is sort of half the diameter away from the medium, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and I just go very lightly. With multiple strokes, Dr. Strange Brush also talked about using light and very controlled strokes, where each successive stroke would land into the groove very naturally of the one before. And because it is a needle in a pin vise, it displaces metal rather than displaces material, not metal.
Right.
Rather than remove it. So if I were to be just a little bit off, I can sometimes cheat. I can just run my fingernail through the previous groove and push the plastic back in a little bit.
Right.
As opposed to having to fill that line up and restart from scratch. And that's what I would do. Once I have my groove down or my panel line, there are a few methods that I go about removing edge burrs. I sometimes use a fresh X-Acto blade, just kind of very gently carve off the burrs.
Yeah.
Sometimes I will use a very fine steel wool to polish off the burrs. That has the effect of rounding off the edges, the corners of your panel line. So that may or may not be ideal. That's also tricky if you have adjacent details that you don't want to touch, because you're essentially sanding over the entire area.
Sure.
Yeah. So and after you clean up the edge burrs, then chances are you'll have to retouch the scribe features a couple times more with your needle, and it's just a back and forth process by that point.
Now, once you've scribed, you've removed the burr, you scribe, you pull out the dust, whatever. Do you? I know many aircraft modelers who will, in the rescribing process as a last step, take something like Tamiya extra thin cement on the tip of a brush that's almost completely removed the cement itself from the brush, but there's just a hint of it, and then they'll run it in the line almost like they're trying to finish or polish the line, remove any little debris that they've missed. Do you do anything to the line once you finish scribing it and removing the burrs and the dust?
I don't. The only thing I would do is maybe go over it with a used toothbrush, which does abrade the area a little bit, the line a little bit, just to get any of the
Gotcha.
Dust or particulates out from in between. I think that trick would be more understandable if I were to be using a tool that actually remove the material. So on a microscopic level, I would imagine that it rips away the material,
right?
Leaving like edge serrations, for lack of a better word, and you want to smooth that over with Tamiya extra thin. So I can see that being useful that way.
Right. Whereas what you're doing with the needle is, in essence, deforming the plastic.
Correct. Different ways to skin the cat.
Gotcha.
For sure. It's interesting that all the compliments you've had and the appreciation you had for our Scribing episode and some of the things you're doing aren't exactly the same as what Dr. Miller was doing, but the proof's in the pudding, as they say. And you're certainly getting excellent results, and it's pretty stinking amazing. I've followed you do all the scribing on the nose, and now you're doing the aft end. As far as the model's concerned, you're still just kind of dealing with the fuselage, I assume.
At this time, I am still dealing with the fuselage. I actually started the model with the nose. And I very quickly move on to the vertical tail, which I finished doing very long time ago. Somewhere in between there, I've actually already worked on the shape of the wings themselves. The camber, the cross section of the wing isn't exactly accurate, and under lighting you can sort of see the shape doesn't look exactly right. So I roughed it out enough that I can probably move on to detailing that. But at this time, it's still just the main fuselage portion. I haven't had the guts to touch the cockpit yet.
Have you scribed the tiles on the wing undersurface?
No, not yet. I have not.
Now that may be a blessing after doing the curved surface of the fuselage, though. That may be.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. I'm.
On the larynx, what would be a larynx on an aircraft, the leading edge extension where it kinks and meets the fuselage. You talked about the camber not being correct. Are you going to? Is there any way to actually try and correct that on the physical model, or are you simply going to have to adapt to what's there and do your best to represent the tiles?
So that's a good question. I appreciate you asking that. The answer is it's complicated.
He's going to try to rebuild it.
So the leading edge extension, the forward part of the double delta, I had to actually cut both of them, the port and starboard side, off along where the leading edge extension meets the fuselage. So lengthwise, I sliced the whole thing off front to back, and then I tilted it to give it the correct nose up pitch. And I went and put lateral slits along the fuselage on the bottom, and I took a large plier, just Haru grade plier, and just pried the bejesus out of the plastic until I had the correct contour. And then and then I just peppered the backside with thick sheet styrene so that when I eventually went to sand it, I could sand through some of the kit styrene as needed to get the correct profile. I did that also for the wing, the upper portion of the wing leading edges where the gray tiles and like the gray reinforced carbon panels are. That has the same issue. So I also did that. I had to laminate styrene on the inside, and I did sand through the kit plastic in some places to achieve that correct cross section. It's not perfect, but it's it looks better than what it started out.
Well, John, you didn't think we'd talk long about scribing.
Just a little bit, right?
Just a little bit. Well, you said you like to talk about your shuttle project, and it's amazing. But you mentioned something just a little bit ago about the cockpit at a high level. What's the plan there?
I don't know. I honestly do not know. I mean, the cockpit is very limited when you're trying to look inside, and as much detailing as I would like to do on the majority of my builds, I don't like to put details in places that are essentially a waste of effort for me going forward.
If they can't see it, why do it?
Well, if I can't see it, why do it too, right?
Right.
I had a gentleman who would legitimately ask if I'm going to build the mid deck of the space shuttle with the airlock on the inside. I just said no.
How many windows does that have? One? Zero?
Exactly. But I still don't know if I will go the 3D printing approach. I'm pretty proficient with CAD. I've been doing it all my professional lives. I've done 3D printing enough to be able to do it if I want to. So I mean that's still a plan. Where it's I think on this build though, I will try to first come up with a solution that is more old school, so to speak. Just craft it out of styrene and stretch screw, and it just the whole project is just nostalgia for me, and that's what I want to have on this on the majority model as much as I can.
Sorry.
So that's definitely going to be my first solution. If not, no, I'm more than happy to explore other approaches.
Well, what I was going to say, John, is, and you may have already answered the question in what you just said, but when I was watching you rebuild the aft end of the shuttle, the aft bulkhead with the engine mounts, I'm thinking, why did you just not 3D print, CAD those mounts up and 3D print them? Because you've got the one on top and the two underneath are probably mirror images of each other, and and then you had to go back and redo it. And if you'd done that in CAD and 3D printed it, that'd have been a lot easier than starting over and rebuilding them from scratch, right? I don't want to even say it, but from a modeling philosophical standpoint, and I think you may have answered this in what you just said a second ago. What's keeping you from using that tool now that you've said you have the capability? Because I'm an engineer too. I've been doing CAD all my life, and I just got a 3D printer, and my tendency is to use it as a tool for simpler things and not try to do these grandiose, all-encompassing, super detailed 3D printed parts out of it. That's kind of where I'm at right now, and that could change. But for you, though, that would seem like if I was building that shuttle, that would have been a prime candidate to just CAD that up and cut and run and just get it over with. What do you got to say about that?
Well, it's interesting that you brought. Oh, congratulations on your 3D printer, by the way. You're gonna have a lot of fun with it. But you nailed it on the head, right? It's a personal philosophy when it comes to the approach that you're gonna take on a model. If I'm not so emotionally attached to this particular kit, I wouldn't even use it. Why bother? They're accurate 3D scans of the shuttle on the internet. Just take it and tweak it. Take the STL file and print a shuttle. Why do I even bother scribing the tiles? So I think that's one thing that the dumb persistence of wanting to use the monogram kit as much as I can. But also it's do you guys know Tony Bell, a fantastic Canadian model builder?
Yeah.
We've been good friends for many years. It's part of the small group of model builders here in Toronto that we know each other for a while. And he asked me actually at Heritage Con a few weeks back, why don't I just 3D print the back end instead of scratch building it? I said straight out to him, isn't it nice to just look at a beautifully handcrafted piece of styrene in pure white and just appreciate its beauty?
I would say yes.
I can see Chris Meddings nodding his head right now.
Yeah. I'm nodding mine, but there's certain things that, oh man, I don't want to interrupt you. Keep going.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I think model building is obviously everybody does it. I'm going totally philosophical here. I hope you guys don't mind, but
I don't mind.
No.
It's if you look at any other craft or artistry, let's take woodworking for instance. Anybody will be able to look at a really, really nicely handcrafted piece of Japanese wood joints. You ever seen those?
Oh yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah.
You swoon over how beautiful and how technical and how well it's put together. I think I get the same thing working with styrene sometimes when I scratch build. So on airplanes, I would take stretch screw and fashion those for breaking hydraulic wires rather than using leaded wires, for instance,
Right.
or photo etch. It just working with plastic as a material. That's something I come to appreciate just personally, and I think that totally applies in this case.
I do think that there is, and I know that this Mike is this way, part of it is the satisfaction of the doing, whereas you can CAD it up and print it, but I don't think you get the same satisfaction from CADing it up and printing it as you do taking several pieces of styrene plastic, measuring, carving, shaping, gluing, sanding, etc., to end up with the exact same looking. If I sprayed them both in black primer, you couldn't tell which was which. But there's part of this hobby is the enjoyment of the doing, not the finished product.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
The Japanese joinery is a brilliant example.
Yes, it is.
It really is, because, you know, I've seen the videos out there with the guys with the saws and the chisels knocking that stuff out and then pounding together these mallets, and it's perfect, right? Well, you got that guy, and then you got the guy who programs those joints into a CNC mill and just cuts it all into the ends of the wood and fits it together.
Yeah.
I don't know where everybody else sits, but from where I sit, that's not the same thing.
No, I agree. It's not the same thing. And again, it's especially with this hobby, it's not all about the end product. You know, it's great when you finish a project, and I'm sure John, when he finishes the shuttle sometime in the late 2020s, is going to sit back and really enjoy looking at it. But it's the journey that was actually the enjoyable part, not putting it in the display case and admiring the handiwork as much.
Yeah, so like, I also want to make it very clear that I'm not disparaging anyone who wants to take the 3D printing route.
No, absolutely.
Seeing their program, their router to do anything for them. But I think this is definitely something that, personally, I really, really enjoy at a certain level.
Right. Or you wouldn't be doing it. I mean, that's, again, in theory, we all sit down at our bench and build because we enjoy it. It brings us satisfaction.
For sure. Yeah. 100%.
Well, John, we've talked about this shuttle. We've talked about scribing. How about we talk a little bit about your other modeling endeavors and what you got going on? I'm sure this shuttle is not taking up all your time. It could certainly take up a lot if you let it, but I got a feeling that maybe you got some other stuff going on.
Nothing. I just finished a 48 scale CF-18 Hornet. I don't know, 6 months ago, and I've been back on the shuttle. That one was the Hasegawa.
Not the easiest kit in the world. The F-18 has some really unusual shapes that make it hard to build as a model.
Correct. Yeah, and across all scales, the 70-second, 40, and 30-second scale, and they all kind of have the similar parts breakdown for obvious reasons, and they all have the same general problem areas as well.
Yeah, I built a CF-18A from the Hasegawa kit many years ago, and I am still to this day that frankly was probably the toughest kit I've built, simply from the standpoint that, again, the shapes are so challenging.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm still waiting for the day when, Tamiya puts out a 48 scale Hornet, either the Legacy or the Super. I don't see a reason why they would not. I mean, they put out Tomcat recently. They put out the F-16 about 10, 15 years ago. They probably won't put out a 48 scale F-15 because they already have one from eons ago, but they don't have a Hornet, so I don't know what's stopping them.
We can always hope, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I don't really have anything. I have a lot of things on my shelf of doom that I can pull off and put together easily enough.
That raises one interesting question. With a project of this size and scope, and I'm referring to the shuttle here, are there times where you just have to take a break? Say, you know what? I'm going to set it to the side. I'm going to go model something else, do something else, because I need it's so big, I need to walk away from it for a little bit.
Yes, 100%. A good example would be Dave Parker, right? He built his giant, magnificent tank model over 6-7 years.
Yeah.
He had to take breaks in between. My Hornet was actually a break away from doing body work and scribing. It's a Canadian Hornet, so I thought I just pull it off the shelf of Doom, slap some paint on it, and have fun dirtying it up. And 10 months later, I was still at it.
You could have picked an easier subject as a break, you know.
I should probably just go whole hog and pick myself up a nice 70-second scale Bandai Millennium Falcon or a White Wing, something that's completely out of my wheelhouse.
There you go.
Nothing but painting, and I know the guys over at the posse are nodding their heads right now.
Yeah,
I'm sure they are. Well, John, what are your modeling interests outside of this shuttle? I mean, you built the Hornet.
You know what? Interesting you ask. I actually said to a couple of model buddy of mine, I don't remember what it feels like to build a normal model the normal way anymore. I honestly do not.
That may be a warning sign, by the way. And I'm speaking from experience.
I need to get a life, right? I grew up as a primarily 70-second scale aircraft model.
Yay!
I you know what though? It's one of those. I love jets.
Yeah.
It's the aircraft era that I grew up with as a child, and I watched Top Gun and all that. So I growing up as a child, my family didn't have a lot of money, so I had whatever I could scrape together to buy model kits was very limited, which means smaller the scale, the more bang for my buck.
There you go.
And 20, 30 years ago, 70-second scale was even more forlorn than today. I mean, Hasegawa that put out a lot of really great model kits, but that was about it. So that sort of allowed me to develop a passion for working with kids that are of that era. Monogram being one of them. I'm quickly digging myself a hole of being one of those guys that says, old kids make you a good model kind of thing. I'm not trying to be like that. But nostalgia is just really high for me for 70-second scale jet aircraft of that era. 70-second scale Haskell Viking with the raised panel lines.
Yeah.
I love that kit to death. I know that I think who's coming out, is it Trumpeter or someone who's coming out with a 70-second scale Viking, year or two. Yeah. I don't think I'll enjoy that nearly as much. The Hasegawa 70-second scale F-14 Tomcat, notoriously difficult to build.
Notoriously.
Notorious. I mean, even Fujimi is easier to build than the Hasegawa kit. But I loved it. I built one a few years ago, Top Gun Bird, a Blue Splinter, and I enjoyed it as challenging as it was. I know I can get my hands on an Academy or a GWH kit these days, but I'm not sure if I'll enjoy it as much. 70-second scale aircraft is and will always be part of my DNA, I think. I know Dave's happy to hear that.
Yes, absolutely. I'm smiling. We're not doing video, but I'm smiling ear to ear. And I built many of those same kits. Hasegawa in the 80s and 90s. I mean, that was the cutting edge. But let me recommend, next time you need to take a break from the shuttle, go pick up a 70-second scale Tamiya Zero. You will enjoy it. You won't spend 10 months building it, and then you can get back to the shuttle so it's done before 2030.
I'm gonna tell you a funny anecdote, if I may.
Sure.
There's a gentleman by the name of John Wong. I'm not sure if you guys know, is a very prolific model builder in the Toronto area. He also used to be my boss at work. So every day during lunchtime, while everyone else were talking about what's the latest in the news and whatnot, the gossip, we will be on hyperscale surfing and shouting at each other across the room.
It's a good way to get a raise.
Yeah. Or fired.
We always outdo each other with what model kit we can give each other at Christmas time to build. That's not put together easy. But yeah, like there was once when he egged me on. He's like, "You were never gonna build a prop aircraft, and you would never build anything out of the box because I have a tendency to not be out of the box."
I can relate to that. Yeah.
Now imagine that, an engineer who can't build out of the box. Huh?
Exactly, right? So I'm like, okay, so what would you do if I do a prop aircraft and out of the box? I'll build a 72nd scale F-16. He never builds jets. So about a month later, I walked into his office in the morning and I plunked down a out of the box 72nd scale P-47 Razorback, Tamiya Razorback, and his jaw just dropped.
Well, and you couldn't have picked a better kit. I mean,
I enjoyed it so much. It was
oh God,
so
yes,
fun.
yeah.
And Kid Decos as well. To me, at Kid Decos, we believe that.
Oh, and that is the only downfall of any Tamiya kit.
Yeah. It's or just I don't know any Edward kit these days. Or
Well, yeah.
agree with you. I'm not sure if I'll build a Zero. I'm not. I can't get worked up with just overall green.
Well, it doesn't have to. There's overall gray. There's some interesting schemes. I'm telling you.
That's true.
And again,
Yeah.
you won't spend 10 months building an CF-18.
Waiting for Tamiya to downsize their P-38. That's what I really wanted.
Oh, the 70, yeah, to take the 48th, and you and me both, from your lips to God's ear.
Yeah.
Oh.
You want to go grab a beer once we're done with Mike here? Let's just go talk 72nd.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, he's got me hooked too. I've got a minor stash of 72nd scale aircraft in my.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Good man.
We started him with float planes because he likes all the stuff, and we're just going to slowly pull him into 72nd scale. Who knows?
I'm in.
Yeah, we're just going to pull you farther in.
Good man. That's the way to do it.
John, are you going to be able to make it to the IPMS USA Nationals in Texas?
No, I don't think so. We wife and I just became new parents not long ago, and we're still very slowly working our way out the diameter of distance we can work away from our house on a day trip.
I gotcha. Well, at least, hey, by 2024, the Nationals are in Madison, Wisconsin, so it's not going to be a hard trip for you, and the child will be a whole year and a half older. So by that point, you've got a toddler on your hands, and you can put them in a car and take them with you.
That is true. Yeah, one of these days I will have to go down to the Nationals. I've never been to a U.S. National, and I've just heard so many good things about it.
Imagine Heritage Con, double or triple the size, lasting 4 days.
Sounds dangerous.
That's what it is.
Well, if you don't make any of those, we're really going to try to make Heritage Con again next year. So.
Oh gosh, yes. There's no question.
Hopefully, we'll see you there, John.
Oh yeah, it'll be great to meet you guys again up here. We need to get some one-on-one time to get up some bourbon in hand.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. You mentioned that before too. You started exploring the bourbon a little bit. So,
yeah.
Glad to hear it. 72nd scale bourbon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
This is my guy. I'm sold.
But John, it was just a pleasure to meet you at Heritage Con after you reached out to us after the scribing episode, and I'm going to keep following the project on the shuttle. Maybe by Heritage Con next year, you have the wings on it.
Yeah. It's good to set goals for sure.
It is. I encourage you to mix some other stuff in there and not drown yourself in this thing, because man, it'll kill you.
Yeah.
Thanks. And yeah, once again, I really appreciate this opportunity to chat with you guys at length. That means a lot. It's great conversations and great company.
And make sure you have your alarm so you can watch Starship lift off tomorrow.
Oh, I will. I will never miss that.
You and me both.
Dave, that was really great.
That was fantastic. I really enjoyed talking with him. I mean, you really get a sense of his enthusiasm for the subject. We
got a VIP list of folks coming to the dojo should we make it to Heritage Con again next year, and we certainly extended that to him, and hopefully that'll happen. We can just sit around and talk about scribing
yep,
face to face.
Absolutely. So, Mike, we're getting toward the end of the episode. You got any modeling fluid left?
I've got none left.
Neither do I.
It's just turned into a trope, I guess. Russell's Reserve 10-year for the money. I like it better than my Bullet, even for the money. It's a little bit more. It's about $8 more a bottle. Really, really good. Everybody who recommended this to likes it. I like it. And I think it's my new staple.
All right. Well, I'll tell you, 40 Creek Canadian whiskey. This was smooth, very drinkable. You know, in my experience, whiskey tends to be really hit or miss because you don't have that consistency of the corn mash that you get with bourbon. But man, I could see sitting around drinking this. It was awesome. Very good.
Well, Ian, thanks for that.
Yes. Thank you, Ian. So, Mike, you got any shout outs?
I do.
Good. I got a couple too.
Well, Mike Radke for sure.
That he was on my list.
Special Agent 001 for the Jamaican meat patties. You know, we get those after Indy and enjoy them for a few weeks after that, and then they're gone. We got to wait till next show. But we really appreciate it. I just, you know, it's just a lot of fun to get the email from you, and then you go get them, and you know, glad you let us pay for them this year.
Thank you. Yes, we're starting to feel bad about that.
What do you got, Dave?
Well, mostly from Indy. I've got some shout outs. Number one is Jeff Groves, Inch High guy, who showed up at the show. And I'm telling you, I'm getting tired of only seeing Inch at shows. You and I need to make a pilgrimage to the Inch High, Casa de Inch High, as it were. And, he's invited us up, extended an invitation. He's even offered to let you peruse his entire library, which could be good or bad, depending. But he brought us 2 bottles of Russell Reserve 10-year, because he knew before you knew that this was your new go-to modeling fluid. So in anticipation, he knows you better than you know yourself. So he bought and brought to us 2 bottles of Russell's 10-year, and, you know, you might be lucky if you get one.
And the modeling fluid segment might be a little dry for folks the next few months.
There you go. Do you have another shout out?
I do not, Dave. Do you?
I do have another one. Tom Choi, another dojo regular and listener regular. We run into him at numerous shows. He brought us 2 cans of a beer called Triptych, and I've got one for you, one for me, and that will be featured in a future modeling segment as a modeling fluid. I can guarantee it. And I want to thank him, and I want to thank everybody who stopped by. Scott King did a really good job being you for the day, and and everybody who stopped by, it was just so nice. The day flew by. Honestly, I got in and got to see the models, but I probably didn't get to see them as much as I otherwise would have, because I was sitting around the table talking with listeners who stopped by to reach out to tell us they like what we do, but also to interact and discuss modeling. And man, you know, there's nothing better than sitting around for a day. You know, I did have a little bit of beer under the table, and sitting there sipping on a beer and chewing on some chips and talking modeling with folks who stopped by. It was awesome. So you got to make it next year.
I'll do it, man. It's the modeling life balance again.
I know. We'll work it out. You'll get there.
Hopefully in May I'll do it better.
You got it.
Well, Dave, we're at the end of this one, man.
Yep, we are. And it's been a good one and a long one. So we better wrap this up. You know what they say, Mike.
So many kits, Dave.
So little time, Mike.
Take it easy, man.
You too.